we're live.
All right.
Well,
How's the sound coming from Mr. Whitmore?
I see Lexi Enerson. Can you let us know if you can hear us okay, Lexi, on Instagram? Or anybody? I see a lot of you are starting to join. Can someone let us know?
Awesome.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear me okay? All right, I'm going to get started. And summer greetings from Nakusa Public Schools. Before we get started, I just wanted to say we are here tonight. Myself, Terry Whitmore, I'm the district administrator, and Brian Grill is our director of pupil services. He is going to be here tonight. We're going to be talking about our district plan for returning to school in the fall, and we are also joined by Mr. Keith Johnson, who is the high school principal, and then we have Susan Baldwin here.
Hello, you can just hear me.
And she's our associate principal. And we've got Deanna Bray here helping us as well, and she's the administrative assistant at the high school. So we're here tonight to talk about our return to school plan. And so Brian and I are going to be talking a little bit about that, giving you a 100,000-foot view of the planning that's been taking, and this has all started even before school let out. And then we're joining forces with the high school, who also wanted to connect with the community and learn more about, get some input from the stakeholders at the high school here so that we can continue to plan. So again, this is the overarching 100,000-foot view from Brian and I, just to give you an idea of where we are in the planning. For the last month and a half, we've been meeting two teams, one around safety, and then another team has been meeting around teaching and learning. And both of those teams have been meeting weekly with stakeholders in the district and really trying hard to learn and grow and really put together a plan for returning to school. And the plan is broken down into tiers, and we're going to be talking a little bit about those tiers and what they mean. And I guess the exciting thing, if there's any excitement, is we're really trying hard to be planned for 3 different scenarios. So Brian's going to be talking about that in a few minutes. But I do want you to know on the front end that we are very thankful for our staff for stepping up. Many staff members have joined these committees to help us sort through this. We also have been joined by Wood County Health Department, who has been working with us weekly to try to really bring together all of the information that's out there around COVID, and then also working with other districts in the area to really understand so that we can be more cohesive and planning together. And then also our school nurse, Denise Nibrath, has been instrumental. She's given most of her summer to just, really worrying about, helping us get off to a safe start in the fall. So that being said, the board's goal is certainly for us to have plans in place to mitigate risk for our students to come back in the fall. So that is our #1 goal. However, we also know that COVID is doing some crazy things around the country, and we are planning for it to be crazy, and we need to be planned for that. Now, our goal and our hope is that we're going to be in green, which we're going to be talking about low risk and what that looks like for kids to come back. But we have to be planning for high risk times perhaps during the school year. So in this time together, Brian and I are going to be talking a little bit about the district and the plans that it's been making to return, and then we're going to open it up to questions. We want to hear from you, and again, we've got up here, if you have questions, you can certainly email Mrs. Baldwin. She'll get those off to us, but you can also add to the chat, and we will be looking at all those questions, concerns, etc. as we continue to plan. Because please know, I think you all know, things are changing daily, and your school people are working really hard to bring students and staff back in the safest way possible. And again, it's all about risk and mitigating risk. So again, I'll say that this is all in the works. We're planning, we're learning, we're changing the plans so that we can most safely bring back kids. So we're going to have an overview of the district plan. We're going to open it up to questions, and then we're going to ask the high school to share some things about the high school and its plan, and then certainly they want to answer some questions as well. So with that, I do want to let you know that this document here can be found on the district website. And Mrs. Baldwin, you want to show that off? You just go to the district website,
Yep.
necusasd.net.
So here's the website, and you just scroll down until you get to the COVID-19 link, and it's right there. I did post that in the Facebook event for today. And then it's our bio link in Instagram if you're watching us there. So there's lots of information there. If you need any questions or clarifications, you can email any one of us, but I'm kind of moderating to kind of help with that. So if you want to send me an email either today, we'll kind of be watching. You can, of course, ask questions in the chat, and we will answer them as they come.
And I will say, before I turn things over to Brian to talk about the different risk levels, on that website, right underneath this document that outlines the plan, and we'll be adding more details to this as we finalize and work with stakeholders. But right underneath that, we're going to have FAQs. So FAQs, we already have started getting some questions, and we're starting to work on answers. We'll get that out there as soon as possible, so that as people have questions, and you're going to have questions tonight, we can not only just share the questions or the answers with you tonight, we're going to be able to share them with everybody by putting them out on the website. So with that, Mr. Brian Grill, our Director of Pupil Services, is going to talk about the work that's been going on behind the scenes for student safety and staff safety.
Mr. Grill, can you say something so we can do a sound check real quick, make sure they can hear you?
Sure. Good evening, everyone.
Can someone on Instagram let me know if you can hear him?
All right. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. And too quick before I begin, I also want to thank again our school nurse, Wood County Health Department, our staff. They have been so amazing in putting in extra hours to help us come up with a plan. So I really appreciate all the work everyone is doing. So to start, I'm going to talk about the plan like Mr. Whitmore said, that the COVID virus is very unpredictable right now. So we wanted to come up with multiple options for us returning to school. So the first level, if all is going well, the first level is our low risk level. That's our green level. If it is deemed that we are at a low risk, kids will be back in school, but there will be additional safety measures put into place to make sure everyone is kept safe. So there will be, beginning of the day, health checks, temperature checks that we will be doing for students. We will also be encouraging hand washing, especially at the elementary school, but all levels. So that way that is occurring. Social distancing. I know there's many questions about what lunch and recess will look like as the days go on at the different levels, but the principals, that's why they will also be holding Facebook Live meetings to talk about the specifics to their buildings. But we've also have begun to think through, what do those encore classes look like? What does it look like in the classroom? But it will look a little differently at each building, but we will have safety measures in place. So low risk, kids are back in school with safety measures to help mitigate the risk. The second level I want to talk to you about, here's the moderate risk. So everything I talked about on the green level, we're going to take additional steps to further our safety for students. So one of the things that we're really going to look at the elementary and middle school level is how do we keep kids in cohorts? So that way they stay in one classroom for the majority of the day, where teachers travel to the classrooms. That means art, music. They come to the students' classroom versus them being in the hallways and traveling. So we will be doing that, but at the high school level, that's a little bit more challenging due to the schedule and the different elective classes that occur. So right now we're looking at different scheduling options. It does look like potentially it will be on an A-B schedule to lessen the number of students in the building. But we're still working through that to say, what does that look like? And then if you think about it, our highest risk level is the red level, and that's why we wanted it to kind of look like a traffic light. The red means in collaboration with the county or the state, the school needs to close and we need to be on a virtual platform. So this would be the level where everyone is at home and we are doing things virtually. Now, the question I may get or you may be having is, well, who determines the levels? How do we determine movement in those levels? So with each of these levels, that's where the collaboration with Wood County Health Department comes in. We are going to be meeting weekly with them to look at what the trends are in our municipality as well as the county, and then we will be providing them some attendance data stating here's the number of students we have out with the fever, out with the sore throat, out with the runny nose. And with our collaboration, they're going to help us determine by building who's at a level green, who's at a level yellow, and who's at a level red. So it'll be a collaboration, but it'll be a weekly determination. And as we figure those things out, we'll make sure to put it on Parent Square on our electronic signs and make sure it is communicated out to the community if a level is changing, but we'll also communicate if it's staying the same. So.
We do have a question on Facebook about more hand washing stations with soap instead of just hand sanitizer. Have we talked about that?
So I know right now we have purchased quite a few hand sanitizing stations, but we will be encouraging, like at the elementary, as kids leave, if we're at the green level, as they leave to go to Encore, things like that, we will be making stops at the restroom to make sure more hand washing does occur.
We have another question. What level are we considered at right now?
That's a great question. I do not have an answer right now because I would have to talk with county to see what their levels are at. But as for right now, I would not have an answer for you.
Okay, another question. These are great questions, guys. During green and yellow, are we going back to normal full day, 5-day school weeks?
So for the elementary, middle school, and high school at green, it would be a normal 5-day week. At the yellow, for the elementary and middle, it would look like a 5-day week, but the high school, pending their AB schedule, it might be 4 days a week.
On both Instagram and Facebook, we have a couple questions about masks. I think that's the the big ticket question is our students, staff, what's our policy on mask wearing?
Sure, I can take that.
All right.
So right now and again we're still observing and learning because certainly things have been changing at the state level. But right now when we're looking at low risk and moderate risk, staff are wearing masks when they're with kids, right, or with other staff members. We're strongly encouraging masks for our kids at both levels, and we're still debating and having conversations about masks at the moderate level, the yellow level, and right now we're being encouraged to make that mandatory. So what's hard is our youngest learners and what that's going to look like. So we're still fine-tuning that and still having conversations. But yes, masks, we've talked about shields, we're looking at different options for masks.
Do you want more questions?
We'd love more questions.
We have more
Yes.
questions. Okay, the busing schedule. What does the busing schedule look like? What
Great
decisions have been
question.
made?
So the state has just given busing information to bus companies and districts. So within the last week or so, our bus company has gotten the state guidelines around busing. So as of right now, we are going to be really looking at our families and the number of students that ride buses. And we are going to be looking at perhaps, on some of our buses, and we're pretty fortunate about the number of kids that ride on our buses because we travel such distances. We don't have as many kids riding on our buses, so that's a good thing. But at the same time, there may be other instances where we have to work on looking at some alternatives for transportation. But right now, we're looking at, and what we're hearing is we could have one student in a bus seat, and families could sit together. So, and that's another area where we're going to be requiring masks to be worn. Other questions?
Yeah, there are more. There's, yeah,
Awesome.
it's great.
Well,
So
let's do one more question on safety, and then we'll talk a little bit about teaching and learning at the district level so that the high school can.
Yep, great. So one of the questions that's come up is the screening process, and they're just kind of wondering what's that going to look like, the backlog, what the plan is for the screening process.
Brian Grove.
So for the screening process, that's a great question. Come in the morning, you're gonna have people working multiple doors to try to avoid there being a huge backlog at one spot. So each of the building principals are talking about different methods. Some might be doing entryways by grade. Some might be doing it by, like at the high school, whether you drive, ride the bus, or walk. You have different options. So there will be multiple stations where students can come in. It'll be a temperature check. And then too, the great thing, the high school with summer school is already doing some of this practice. It's 5 questions. It's do you have a fever? Do you have a sore throat? Do you have a runny nose? And Ms. Baldwin, help me with the last 2. I can't remember them off the top.
Have you had COVID-like symptoms?
Have you, well, no, it's have you been around anybody with COVID, cough, sore throat, shortness of breath, and then we take the temperature check.
Yep. So they answered those questions, and right now, as we have students practicing that process right now, it's really going pretty smooth as long as we have the staff there to assist. And it's taking, I'd say, about 15 seconds a kid to get through the process.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about teaching and learning. So we've had a committee working on teaching and learning. So if you want to shift over here,
So sorry.
that would be great.
We're trying to get the volume better on Facebook right now, so
All right.
we apologize.
Good, I can speak up too. So the Teaching and Learning Committee has been working at the district level to offer suggestions and guidelines to the buildings. And so one of the biggest changes from last spring when we were closed to us opening back in the fall and having to use virtual learning or remote learning. So when we're doing teaching and learning at all levels, the district has purchased 2 different learner management systems, which are online tools for our teachers to work with kids to continue teaching and learning in the classroom and at home. So our elementary school is going to be using Seesaw, and you can certainly check that out online. Seesaw, it's a learner management system designed for young kids, and our teachers will be able to work. And we're going to be using Seesaw when it's low risk, moderate risk, and high risk. So that, and we really want to work with and support parents in learning how to best use Seesaw in the event that you'd have to be working with your kids at home. Again, our goal is always to be in green at the lowest risk, but that requires us all to be doing our parts at home as well. So Seesaw is the elementary version. And then the 4th through 12th grade, we've purchased Schoology. So that's another online learner management system that teachers are getting trained in. We want to train our kids on how to use Schoology, and then we also want to support and help our parents learn that online management tool so that they can, in the event that we end up being in a remote situation, parents can be supporting kids at home. So our hope is that we're much better prepared in the event that we have to do remote learning this next school year. So on the teaching and learning side, that's been our focus, and our goal is to, again, introduce these learner management systems to our kids at all levels so that they feel very comfortable with the new learner management systems. So with that, I also want to say, are there more questions around, should we do a couple questions?
Give us a minute if you have another
Okay.
thing, because yes, there are a lot of questions.
All
We're
right,
trying
so
to.
we'll come up with a couple other questions. And again, Brian mentioned that, again, this is district guidance to the schools. So each school now has been working over the last month and a half on making sense of what the district has been doing around safety and then around teaching and learning. So remember, we are giving you the district's 100,000-foot view around the return plan. So the schools will each be coming out with and sharing more details as the weeks roll on and we get closer to the school year.
Okay, so one question that we got is, are students going to be able to choose to continue to learn remotely? Will that be an option given to our students?
That is a great question. As a matter of fact, that's another area that the Teaching and Learning Committee is charged with. And right now, we understand and we're hearing from parents, on a weekly basis, that they just are not feeling comfortable bringing their kids back to school. We completely understand that. And while the district has a virtual school that is full, each of our schools in the district will be offering services virtually. So you can continue to have your kids learn remotely at home, and we will provide you with the curriculum for that. So that's a great question.
So one of the other questions that I'm seeing is related to that. Some families struggled with internet access, either because of where they lived. I mean, there's a variety of reasons. Do we have a plan to assist families?
We certainly have hotspots. We're working on devices, but as far as being, the connectivity, that would be case by case. So that person should contact the building principal.
Do you want to say something?
No,
Okay. We have to find other questions.
Okay.
They are coming in.
So Brian, did you have anything else? Did we miss anything? I guess there are some things that we're currently continuing to work on. So maybe you want to talk about those topics that have been brought up. If we could put the camera back on, Brian. There's some topics that have been brought up, and we're trying to kind of take one bite of the elephant at a time.
So the focus has been on safety and what does it look like coming back to school, but some of the other things we're considering as a district as well. How do we support students socially, emotionally through this process? Because we know some students had struggles when we went full at-home learning. So we're trying to create plans with our school counselors and how we can support students. We're also working on office procedures. What if a student becomes sick during the day? What does that look like? How do parents pick up their children? All those things are also being worked on with the input of our administrative assistants. Parent involvement, how are we going to train parents as we start these new programs of Schoology and Seesaw, so that way you understand how they work and you can ask questions and feel comfortable. Another area we're also talking about are students with disabilities. How are we going to provide special education services for those that need it? Because occupational therapy, physical therapy, some things of that nature, it's very hard to do those things online, so we're still figuring out what do our services for students with disabilities look like, as well as services for our English language learners. So those are topics that'll still be developed, and as we do more Facebook Live meetings, we'll be rolling the plans out for those different areas as well.
So we have another question. Actually, we have several questions kind of about our screening process. Is Mr. Whitmore going to be covering that?
I certainly can,
Or
Brian.
we can go back and forth.
Okay. So the first question is students with allergies. Allergies especially have been really rough on me, I know, right? So cough, runny nose is pretty common with allergies. What's our stance on that?
That's a great question, and that's one we've been thinking about and collaborating with Denise, our school nurse. She's been working with different doctors at the Aspires Riverview Clinic and Marshfield Clinic to say, how do we decipher that? I don't have an exact answer right now, but that's a question we thought of as well. So we're just collaborating with the local medical professionals and saying, how do we decipher that, and how do we, make sure we're not having a student be out more days due to allergies instead of COVID-like symptoms. So I
So
don't
you wanna
have an
talk-
exact answer, but I know we're working on it.
Brian, you want to just talk about the flow chart that we're working on?
I don't have it in front of me because.
But
Wood
no,
County-
just in general.
Wood County is working in collaboration with school nurses, the health department, and medical professionals to come out with a flow chart based on if you're showing this symptom, this is how many days they recommend a kid should be out. And it's a great flow chart to say, okay, if you have a fever, if you have a cough, if you have this, answer these questions, and that'll help determine how long a student should be out of school. But that's been a joint collaboration between the school nurses, Wood County Health Department, and the medical professionals in the area.
And that is a document that we need to meet one more time on that with area schools. And that is a document that we'll actually put out on the website so that people will be able to see that. So a lot of people's questions will be answered through that document. But we want to be consistent across our schools and how we're handling symptoms, right? And if the same symptoms are showing up in Wisconsin Rapids, they're going to be handling those symptoms the same way. So there's going to be a universal flow chart that all of us are using that really helps us all sort through, and we're not all trained, right, in deciphering that information. So I think I'm really excited to see how that can help us.
So I think some of the other screening questions were answered in that answer. So if you have a question that wasn't answered, just ask it again, because going between the two different social medias is tricky.
And can I say again, so if your questions weren't answered, we are going to be looking at these, and within the next week or so, we're going to have all the questions and answers out on the district website so that you have a chance to read through those, and perhaps our next Facebook Live can be generated by your questions.
Mm-hmm. So another question that's kind of related is a confirmed positive in the district staff, student, community. Does that fit into that flow chart? Is that different?
We're getting close on what, so this person's asking what's going to happen, right?
Essentially.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to come out in that information.
And then will the community parents specifically be notified when that happens? Is that part of that flow chart as well?
As best we can, correct.
Perfect, thank you. Do absent days get counted?
That's. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can handle that one. So, as far as absent days go, much of our absent system is dictated by state statute, and I know there's a lot of work happening from various organizations trying to work with the state legislature, DPI, and the governor as well, to figure out exactly how absences will work and how truancy law will work coming up for this school year. So at this point, we don't have that knowledge about what's going to happen there, but that certainly is something that is being considered as far as what will truancy laws look like, and how will absences be recorded, and then if we build towards truancy, or what will happen. But certainly there's consideration being given for the unique situation that we're in. And I'd like to take a moment just to thank Mr. Whitmore and Mr. Grill for coming tonight and joining us. We also do have quite a few. I'm very glad when we went out last week asking for questions and announcing that we were going to be doing Facebook Live and Instagram as well. We want your thoughts. We want your opinions. We want your questions. The part that I can tell you is that with all of my heart, I want the school year to start normal. With all of my heart, I want students back in the building. I want teachers and staff in the building. But equally, with all my heart, I want people to be safe. And that has been the great central conundrum of all of this, has been, how do we do that? And so I know from Mr. Whitmore, Mr. Grill, Mrs. Baldwin, Mrs. Bray, and every administrator
And school board.
and school board,
Yeah.
throughout the state and country, trying to sort through that. And so thank you for your understanding. Thank you for providing us with your questions. We've got a lot of questions that have been submitted to us as well before, from when we had asked last week for that. So are there more questions that have come up now?
One I think would be good for you to kind of talk about, Mr. Johnson. So gym, common area times, cafeteria lunches, what's the discussion around that? What's the plan?
Yeah, so what we're working to try and do is how do we limit the number of students that are in any one common space? And so some of that is looking at certainly with FIED, practicing physical distancing in all of those locations, limiting the number of students that would be in locker rooms, trying to limit the number of students that would be in the commons. At the various levels at Green, like Mr. Grill had talked about, we would still maintain open campus for our juniors and seniors. And when they come back into the building, they would go through a health check again and a temperature screen, trying to figure out the logistics of how we make that work as well. But we will have we've all gotten very used to the 6-foot markers when we walk into various public buildings, and we will have 6-foot markers to mark that out for everyone. We also will have, when you're in a classroom, desks will be distant 6 feet, or in some classrooms we will have plexiglass barriers to help protect students from viruses. So that's some of what will happen there. Also, when you are in the hallways, it's going to be very important, and we're going to be asking continuously to practice the 6-foot distancing and to maintain that 6-foot distancing. We do realize that at the high school level, at every level, it is going to be difficult because we're being asked to either be wearing a mask or be maintaining a 6-foot distance from anyone who is not from our household. That's going to be a challenge at every level, and there are going to be some special challenges at the high school level. So we're asking certainly for students for student cooperation and understanding as we come back to the school year, and parents and families as well.
So another question that's kind of logistic and very specific to the high school, class lists, school orientation, back to school night, school pictures, that kind of thing that usually happens in August. What's the plan?
So we are going to be, at the beginning of August, we will be releasing, we're looking at probably scheduled open house is what we will be doing. And I think each of the buildings is really at this point moving towards that scheduled open house of some kind, so that we will be putting out a list, and we will have a maximum number of students and parents, families that we can have in the building at any given time. All of our staff will of course be in masks, but that is what we are looking at for open house.
All right, another question, hot button item on both social media, sports. What's going on with athletics and our sports?
So, as many of you know, the WIA has released summer guidelines. We don't expect working with, so we have, the WIA is giving a lot of discretion to local control, and the various athletic conferences, and then the schools will be working together as well. The unique part for us this coming school year is we'll actually be in 3 athletic conferences. So we'll have the CWC Large, Central Wisconsin Large in football, and then we'll have the SEC, the South Central Conference, for most of our athletic sports, and then we'll also be in the Cooley Conference for girls golf. Within the WIA guidelines, they tier the sports, so certain sports are deemed higher risk because of physical contact and just proximity to people. Those sports will have different expectations versus something like golf, where it's a much easier time to imagine how you would do physical distancing with golf. There will also be, and I realize this is a hot button, I don't know if it's come up at all there, but there will be limitations on who can attend events is our expectation. Certainly everything we've gotten from the WIA is that looking at limiting the number of people, again, it's all about controlling crowd size and limiting the number of people who are attending various sporting events is going to be a real part of what we'll be looking at in this coming school year.
I think that's all the questions for right now. If you guys want to address some of the
So we can
issues.
jump into our questions that we had submitted before. Thank you to the people who have submitted questions before. So each of us has a basket in front of us, and those are questions that have been previously submitted. So we're going to pull out questions and we will be answering them. Some of them already have been answered. I think.
So should I start over here?
Sure.
So, a parent had emailed in, what is busing going to look like? And I touched on this a little bit, but we certainly are going to offer transportation. And again, we really want to collaborate with our stakeholders. It is possible that for some routes, we may be asking parents if they can to provide transportation. Buses will be cleaned and sanitized before and after use, and students will be asked to sit alone or with other family members where possible. And again, face masks will be worn. So yes, we will have transportation, and one of the strategies we're using, in the past, we've scheduled buses for everybody. This year, parents are going to have to sign up if they are interested in having transportation. That way we can do a better job of getting our buses to the maximum level. So that's transportation again, but yes, we will have busing. The buses will be disinfected after, before and after each use. So that's busing.
Can you, Mr. Johnson, can you clarify real quick? Do you know, is there any possibility that some sports will not happen at all?
Is there a possibility? There would be, yeah, some degree of possibility. We're still waiting to find out exactly what will happen. The WIA, certainly there has been research done by researchers at UW-Madison, amongst other schools, looking at the social emotional impact of canceling sports this past spring. And so I would say that the WIA and everyone involved is really trying very hard to avoid canceling entire seasons. And so, the unique situation we're in, I can't rule anything out, but I can tell you that the WIA and the Nakusa School Board, Nakusa School Administration, and coaches, Mr. Hahn, our athletic director, are all working very hard to avoid that, but I wouldn't rule anything out at this point.
And can I just share on that? So I met with probably 300 district administrators around the state today, and that is the big question, especially with football this fall. That's a contact sport, and people are really asking questions about how can we be mitigating risk in the building during the day, and then inviting kids to come in contact with each other after school for sports. Football probably being the biggest contact sport. So they are looking at options. They too want our kids to be participating and involved, and they want our kids to have the chance to participate in sports. So they're looking at all options, and it's something that, again, we all know that things are changing day to day, and we have asked as district administrators for a survey to go out to each district to really find out where we are and what our thinking is on that. Because if let's say Nakusa decides to play football and other districts decide not to, now we're pitting each other against each other, and who wants that? So we really have to take a look at, I'm struggling with that. I mean, if we're asking half of our kids to come into the high school when we're at the moderate level yellow, and then that night all our kids come together to play football. So just know it's a great question, and we're just trying to be as transparent as possible. We are certainly, we have a voice. Mr. Johnson's got a voice. I know that Mr. Hahn has been voicing his concern. I'm voicing my concern, and it really needs to come together so that sports match up with what we're doing in our schools. So, yes, it's a hard question to answer right now.
I got another tough question for Mr. Johnson. We'll give him.
Let's give him a hard one.
He had a long break at the beginning. So, what about choir and band?
Yeah, so with choir and band, we are looking at different ways to do. Well, you weren't kidding there.
I wasn't kidding.
But with choir and band, we're looking at where are locations within our building where we could do physical distancing and at the same time allow those those courses to continue. And so I am feeling pretty confident that we will be able to find locations using the auditorium and the gyms. Of course, obviously it becomes a shared space with bi-ed classes, but I am feeling comfortable at the high school with choir and band. They won't look the same as what you're used to, but I do feel confident that we will be able to offer those.
Another question, can parents, families start the year sending students to school, but then change their minds and switch to virtual or home learning if they're thinking that that's going to work better and, weighing all the options?
Well, I would say we are, and I shared earlier about learning remotely. So those families that choose to do the whole year learning remotely will have a plan in place to make that happen. And certainly we are going to use all our resources to support a family that may decide to do that. Let's say we get to October and the risks continue to rise if that were to happen, and said family want their kids to be learning at home. Absolutely, we're going to work as best we can. Remember, our resources are limited. We're going to do the best we can to make that happen. We're still working on developing those plans, but yes, that's the plan. How about Mr. Grill? You should have
Mr. Grill gets a question out of the basket.
So one of the questions we had, how can I find out the level of our district schools? So where are these going to be posted? So we are going to have these on, each school will have them posted on their homepage of their website. They'll be posted on the district website, but we'll also be sending information via Parent Square out to say every week when we make the determination of the color level, that will be sent out. We're also going to be using our marquees out front in front of the schools to say this school is at a level green or yellow or red. So we're going to have it posted for families to see. Also on here's the question, will I be able to know the level of other districts? So for sports, if you go to other schools, what level are they at? That we don't have an answer for yet because each school is figuring out their plan. Some are doing something similar to us, using a green, yellow, red. Others are calling it different things, but we don't know how they're gonna publicize it or put that out there yet. But that's a great question. So we just don't have an answer yet for the other districts.
Sure.
Mr. Johnson, you want to pull another question?
Pull a question out of the basket. Will parents be allowed to enter the building during the school day? And the answer to that is we will not be allowing parents to enter the building during the school day. Is the short answer. There will be. We're going to continue to evolve and grow as we go through this and figure out what's working and what's not working. But that is certainly currently, Mr. Grill, I believe, even at the lowest level for any of the buildings,
Correct.
the plan is to not. So,
And if there's a meeting that's required, like you need to talk to a principal, things like that, we'll continue to use Zoom and other platforms of teleconference so those meetings still can occur. It's just we're not encouraging those to happen face-to-face right now in the school.
What if a parent has a mask when they need to come into the school? Is that going to be an option?
So right now, encouraging so we have less people in the building to come in contact with staff and students, even if they're wearing a mask. Right now, we're encouraging parents. We will not be allowing them in the school right now.
Mr. Whitmore, you got a question to answer?
I actually, I have an answer.
That's so great.
I know.
Mr. Johnson, do you have another one?
I have a second one on here that I think has pretty much been answered on this particular sheet. What will sporting events look like for spectators? That's going to depend on the WIA risk level and then the risk level identified for the Nakusa School District and then also the risk level for the other school that we would be playing against. So it's going to depend on a few different factors there, but it does look like it would be tiered so that at one point it would be just athletes, officials, and then school supervisors that would be there, down to the point where it would be an unlimited, attendance like we've had in the past.
Another question that popped up, perhaps because of our location, will students be able to check out library books?
That's a question that
That's, yep. So at each of the different buildings, so at green, they'll be able to check out books. But then at the yellow level, if they check out a book, we do have a practice in place where the book will be quarantined for 3 days, and then it'll be put back on a shelf before another student can check it out. So green, yes, yellow, there will be a 3-day quarantine of that item before another kid can check it out.
Did you have a question to go over, Mr. Grimm?
I have 3 left. So,
Wow.
one is a few are in regards to the cleaning practices of what does that look like at night, things like that. I want to shout out to Lynn Knight, our business manager, and Steve Hersberg, our buildings and ground. Neither could be here tonight, but that might be another Facebook Live. They are working on plans for how do we clean the school, how often are they doing deep cleans, things like that. So that is something we are working on. But Steve Hersberg, our building and grounds manager, he is very knowledgeable and is connecting with other schools. He would be able to speak to that question better than I could. So, but we are working on that. Do you want me to do another, or keep a few left?
I have a question real quick.
Oh, sure.
So you have multiple children at home and one of them has a fever, do all of the children need to stay home? Or any of the symptoms for that matter?
That's a great question.
Sure.
I don't have an answer yet.
I'm writing it down.
We need to write that one down.
We're writing it down.
And ask Denise
So
Dipper,
thank you,
our
Amanda
school
Cooper.
nurse.
I think you asked that twice and I missed it before. Sorry. What will happen if there is a spike in COVID sicknesses within the school?
Well,
If there's a positive case, we will be in contact with the Wood County Health Department, and it really will be a collaboration of how do we mitigate, what are next steps. So there will be some district decision making, but a lot of it will be coming from the health department saying, here's what we need you to do to keep this under control. So just so you know, if that were to occur, it'd be a collaboration.
And if I could talk to that, so one of the things that is important to me, and I've been, and we've all been studying and learning what's happening in other countries and what's happening in other organizations. And when we get to this yellow level, and we have cohort groups, let's say that we've got a classroom, Mr. Whitmore's classroom of 3rd graders, and my kids and myself have been in that classroom all day, every day, and teachers have been coming in to serve those kids. If somebody is symptomatic, we are going to then be able to mitigate, hopefully we've mitigated risk, to spread to the rest of the building. So we're going to be able to, hopefully protect the rest of the buildings from exposure. So we're working extremely hard to make sure that in each of these levels, we're doing everything we can to mitigate risk spread. So I think that's an important point. We haven't necessarily, and again, it's going to be a collaborative effort. So when the county comes in and has the conversation with us, you can better believe they're going to be asking tough questions to determine the risk spread. So our job is, if we know that we're on high alert, to really try to limit the risk of spreading the virus. So it really comes down to, though, us working with the county to collaboratively make decisions, because they take over after there's somebody been diagnosed with COVID.
Sorry. Still learning. Will the concession stands be open during sporting events?
concession stands will not be open. No, the recommendation we've got is to not have concession stands open.
You might mention what the WIA website, or they could look at all of
Yeah, if you want to see the guidelines currently from the WIA, certainly you can go to the WIA website. Make sure you put WIA Wisconsin, or you get, I think it's the Washington State website you might find if you don't. So WIA Wisconsin, and you can find all of the current guidelines. want me to do a
question?
question from the basket? Or
I have a question.
okay.
With some communications mentioning that materials being sent back and forth between school and home will be limited, will there be adjustments to the school supply list, or can we go ahead and purchase off the initially supplied lists? So the school supply list, what parents and families are purchasing maybe right now, will that be changed?
For the high school, we do not foresee changes on that currently for the high school. But at the high school level, we don't tend to do the community, dump everything together in a basket. So the sharing of supplies will be limited. Will be not allowed really, but amongst students in a classroom. But at the high school, I don't foresee changes coming. But at the elementary and middle school, I can't speak.
So we will have to follow up. I think that'll be part of the elementary and middle school principals Facebook Live sessions.
Yep.
So we'll make sure to pass that along so they have that as part of their presentation.
So they're wondering about cell phones. Mr. Johnson, are they going to be able to bring their cell phones in?
We will be continuing with our cell phone policy as we had it last year. So the cell phone policy, we don't
We had
intend to
0 violations fourth quarter.
Fourth quarter was fantastic. We did not have a single cell phone violation, so thank you to the Coosa High School students for
You
that.
did a fantastic job, best ever. What will serving lunch look like? And this is specific to the high school, this question. It'll be different at each building, but let's just talk about the high school
So
right
I'll
now.
be working with Mrs. Coyer, who is the supervisor for the school nutrition at the high school. We're going to be working on what that will look like. Certainly Taher is the company that we contract with for meals. I expect that will look significantly different as it is anywhere you go right now, where you get box meals or different things of that sort. So that is an area that we still have a lot of figuring out to do, what that will look like.
So this is a question that was, so there's a lot of questions that are coming in right now, and we have about 10 minutes left, so I don't know that we'll be able to get all of them. The question is specifically mentioned for elementary, but I think it can be applied to all of the levels. Any talk on reducing class sizes when in physical, like when in the brick and mortar buildings? Groups of 10 or less was recommended. What happened to that recommendation, and where are we at there?
I can start with some
Sure.
of it, but then talk to. So at the elementary and middle school, so I'll speak to the middle school. Dr. Black will be talking more about this when he does a presentation, but he does have a way to physically distance using multiple classrooms for students by keeping them in cohorts still. So we will be able to maintain that 6-foot distance. And at the elementary school, that's where some of the rooms are moving from tables to desks, and we will be able to separate desks. For some of the table situations for our younger learners, kindergarten, things like that, that's where the plexiglass barriers that we had talked about earlier come into play. So if we can't maintain the 6 feet due to us using tables at those ages, we will have barriers between students to help with that. But as for the DPI guidance of 10 per room,
They've changed
DPI has changed that and they're updating their guidance as COVID evolves. So just like we're saying our plan is going to evolve, DPI is also saying their plan is evolving and they're making updates as we learn more. So I know that was originally in there, and I know there was talk of them taking it out. I can't remember if it's still in there.
They've removed that, but I don't know what they've replaced it with.
Okay.
So that's something to look at. But I do know that we have small sizes at the elementary school, which is a good thing. Yet at the same time, remember, we're going to do the best job we can. We also want our kids to love learning and love being in school. So, that's something that is certainly controversial. We've got people on both sides that, really, we certainly want our kids to be safe. We also know that the spread isn't as prevalent among our youngest learners. So, we're still trying to sort through that. But class sizes, you know, we're going to do the best job we can with our staff to, you know, spread kids apart.
On that line then, what about locker use? Are we spreading out lockers?
That would be a...
Yeah, so we are looking at changing how lockers are assigned and moving away from some of the way that it's been done in the past and trying to be mindful of how close students are. We don't have enough lockers to actually do 6 feet between every student and still have enough lockers. But certainly looking at how do we arrange lockers, and if we are on an A-B schedule, what would that look like? So that's where we're at with lockers. Lockers are certainly a tricky one for us.
And what about opening windows? Is that an option?
In some of our classrooms at the high school, it's an option. Now, we're going to have to work with Steve Herzberg and Steve Dudley, because obviously the HVAC system we have to sort through. So I don't know if you guys have anything more.
Well, so that's something we're working with our buildings and grounds on. The majority of our windows, a few years back, we redid the windows in our buildings, and at the time, the best practice was not to have windows that open. So, but we do have new HVAC systems, and we don't know the potential of getting more fresh air into the building, so we're looking at that, researching that, because that's the goal, bring in more outside air and getting more air circulating. So, and as a matter of fact, that was a question that came up today. We did a walkthrough, and you know, as a side note, we're really working hard for those kids that might have symptoms, developing a transition room from school to home, so that if kids do get sick, we've got a spot for them to wait for their parents. And then we want to make sure that those rooms have the proper ventilation, etc. Just keeping kids safe.
Do you have more questions, Mr. Johnson?
I do, and one that, well, I mean, all of them that I really want to get to, but just a few. But one, if we operate an A-B type schedule, how can we ensure that older siblings will have the same schedule as their younger siblings? How can those older siblings then be expected to complete their own schoolwork? So what we did, and thank you to Melissa Ward, Mrs. Ward, who was the one that recommended the idea, and then thank you to Mrs. Bray, who did the legwork of figuring this out. We took all of our students and we went with the oldest child in a family and in the household, and then that determined whether everyone in that household would then be an A day or a B day. So if an oldest child was born on an even day, they became an A day, and if they were born on an odd day, that family then became a B day. It worked out for the high school. It was amazingly, I mean, it was almost exactly 50%. And then we've also gone through, again, thank you to Mrs. Bray for doing the work of this, class by class then, what does that look like? And that didn't break out, obviously then you're expanding out quite a bit, and that didn't work out 100% 50-50 for every class. But then Mrs. Sievers is working on balancing out some of those classes like that. So that was one of the questions. One question, will students be able to carry backpacks and bags to classrooms? Not at this time. Backpacks and other bags are still against dress code, and we're going to be encouraging students to carry items they need in pencil bags, which I guess I would rescind what I said earlier about the school supply list. We should probably add pencil bags to that so that people know that they should buy a pencil bag, and then that's what they can carry their supplies in. So we are not currently planning to allow backpacks at the high school. Let's see. Have you considered using cohorts of students? If so, what would that look like? At the elementary and middle school, Mr. Grill talked about cohorts. At the high school, this is probably our biggest area that may push us towards more of that A-B route, is just simply we don't have an effective way to create cohorts without limiting the number of electives that students would be able to choose from. So that's where we're at right now, that we don't have an effective way at the high school for cohorts without limiting elective choices. How and when will communication be distributed about changes in events? Well, thank you everyone for coming to this Facebook Live session, because certainly they're going to be shared as soon as possible. We're going to be using Power School, Schoology will also have, for the high school students and parents, some communication, and then also Parent Square and our NHS Facebook and Instagram sites will be used.
We are counting. We have like 5 seconds on Instagram. So,
Okay, so let's just, well, on behalf of the entire district, I would like to thank you for joining us tonight and being a part of this, and then listening perhaps to this afterwards. But please know that we do not have all the answers, but we want you to partner with us in really making this back to school a success. And we want every one of you to know that we are very fortunate, I think, to have a staff and administration and board that's supporting this 3-tier plan, because really we can handle right now, and I know that we want our kids back in school, and parents need to be working, and I know the strain that puts on families to have kids learning remotely at home. So we're going to do everything we can, and please, again, we all are responsible to stay in the green, and that's by doing what we need to do to stay healthy, right? So numbers matter. But on behalf of the district, I thank you for participating, and I really thank each and every one of you for understanding that this is unknown territory. And we are going to make mistakes, and we're going to ask for your forgiveness, and we're going to learn from the mistakes and hopefully get better, and make the right decisions to mitigate the most risk possible. Because the whole safe thing is it's not about safety, it's about mitigating risk. So on behalf of this team tonight, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. And we stay tuned to hear more information. And please check out the website for the FAQs. Have a good night.